Well, good morning. This is Dick Black. Welcome to Focus on the News. Um, we have lots of things going on these days. There's no doubt about it, and so we'll get right on. By the way, I believe we're on YouTube this morning, and we are planning to get on Rumble also very shortly. Okay, let me just start off. This is with a local story here. I'm in Loudoun County, Virginia. You may recall if you saw the big explosive news about the school boards when all of the flap went national and went viral. I gave the speech that shut down the school board meeting that day, and caused the Loudoun County School Board to adjourn and flee out the back room and order people to be arrested and all of this sort of stuff. But in any event, the first thing that we'll start off with is there is a Soros-backed prosecutor. Buddha Bibiraj is her name, and Buddha Bibiraj was one of the three prosecutors in Northern Virginia who was elected with vast amounts of money. I mean, these Commonwealth attorney positions, which is sort of like a district attorney in many places in the country, but it's the chief prosecutor. And George Soros has been buying up the prosecution all over the country. She was one that he got elected with a fantastic amount of funding in Loudoun County. Well, ever since she has been here, crime has been going up. Things have been going wrong within the Loudoun County prosecutor's office. And we have a fellow who is accused of very brutal crime here in Loudoun County, and what happened is, for some reason, whatever it was, he became enraged, I guess, and was accused of stabbing his brother's girlfriend to death in front of her 9-month-old child, I believe a daughter, and then he lifted her up and put her body into the trash can. And there was a district court judge, perhaps a woke judge, I'm not sure, but there was some concern that the judge might put this fellow in a mental hospital rather than prosecute him. In any event, Bibiraj's deputies were trying to get the charges shifted to a different level court, but they didn't do it very competently. And in the course, they dropped the existing charges without filing the new ones. And this fellow, very, very serious criminal suspect, walked free, and he fled to Chatham County, Georgia, where he was picked up the following day by police. In any event, this Soros prosecutor, Buddha Bibiraj, she was under attack earlier for hiring a registered sex offender to work in her office, and she didn't perform a background check. In addition, a circuit court judge removed her, Buddha Bibiraj, from a case where she was entering a plea agreement. She was, I guess, responding to the plea agreement, and as part of the agreement that she and the defendant were presenting, she did not reveal to the judge his prior robbery charges. that's very, very important. If you have somebody who has been a former offender, and she's obviously a repeat offender, then that has an enormous impact on how you sentence an individual. So the judge was very upset at her and pulled her off the case. Now, what's happening is when all of these Soros prosecutors took office in Northern Virginia, and they actually were taking office all around the country, Soros had an incredible impact on the collapse of the criminal justice system in America. Well, when Buddha Biberaj came in here in Loudoun County, she got rid of almost the entire staff of prosecutors. Many of them she fired, some of them quit under pressure, but she was left with almost none of the original people. So she went ahead, she replaced them with woke prosecutors who would, sort of look the other way when certain people were accused of crimes and always keep a thumb on the scales of justice. Well, if we didn't know better, we might think that George Soros, mega billionaire that he is, was actually trying to break America apart by unleashing this enormous crime wave on American communities. I'm not saying that that was his intent, but it certainly is the result of what he's doing. Okay, next topic we've got this morning. This was out of Yahoo Finance, and they ran a headline that says Tesla sinks 50% from November record high as troubles pile up. This is a stock market headline, and they're talking about Tesla Motors and the fact that they closed down at a level of $204, $205 on Friday, and their closing high back November the 4th was about $410. So they hit 50% decline. And now I don't pick out Tesla to pick on them, but simply to use them as an example of the wider problem with the stock market and the tremendous declines being experienced with some of these stocks. There's a wider meltdown of the markets. They have blipped up here the last few days, but the economic slowdown is rattling investors, and they're bracing for the impact of rising inflation, which continues to take hold. It's not being controlled by the Fed, even though the Fed has taken significant action to raise interest rates. But all of this is concerning stock market investors, of course. Now, I think what's happening is that we're nearing the end of the line on a period of gargantuan deficit spending. And the deficit spending oftentimes has been used deliberately to prop up the stock market. And, if the stock market starts to lag, you go out there and you pump up a bunch of money, and the Fed props up the stock market. And so we've gone through this period, and the problem is, in the end, there ain't no free lunch. That's a famous economic statement. Congress, it either has to balance a budget, which it never does, or it can balance the budget through taxes. Now, what happens when they spend more money than they bring in taxes? Well, what happens is inflation is a tax, and it's just not officially announced. But if it doesn't come from some other place, it comes from all the family budgets of people who have to shop for food and pay the rent and so forth, and also for investors, people who have saved for a lifetime and put away money, and they may have a very large amount of savings that they use in retirement. That's taxed away through inflation. And so we're at the beginning of this, and it's beginning to look like we're going into 1970s style stagflation, where we will have higher and higher interest rates, and yet it'll be accompanied by unemployment and a general slowing down of the economy. But the problem is that we've spent money that we didn't have, and we've done it to an enormous degree. Right now, for example, we're importing huge numbers of illegals to displace American workers. Now, jobs are going to start tightening up. Perhaps by early next year, we're going to start seeing unemployment. It's going to become an issue. And so these illegals are coming in, they're cheap new labor. And who will they displace? Typically, first-generation immigrants will be the ones who suffer the most from the influx of new workers. And for poor people generally, people on low incomes, people struggling along on Social Security, these immigrants, these illegals, are taking away their housing, they're taking away their medical care for poor families, single mothers, they're taking away the public schooling that they get, and they're taking away food. So all of this, it has to come from somewhere. When you bring in 2 million immigrants, and there's no doubt that the Biden administration planned in advance and orchestrated and had people who funded the movement of all these people. Because keep in mind, these people were paying, for some reason, the number $9,000 sticks in my mind. It varied, probably anywhere from $5 to $5,000 to $15,000, depending on who was coming across and where they were from. So you think of it, how many American poor families could cough up, $5,000 or $10,000 to go somewhere else? Not a whole lot of them. How many people living in a thatched roof hut down in Honduras could cough up, $9,000 for a trip across the border? No. The Biden administration, I suspect, has arranged to have some of these very, very wealthy billionaires who make up the Democratic Party actually directly funded, or perhaps indirectly by coordinating with the drug cartels that are bringing in the fentanyl and the cocaine, and getting them saying, look, okay, we'll take care of you with the open border. In exchange, you fund all these people and bring them in. We'll bring a couple of million people, and then we can fan them out, especially to districts where Republicans are in the majority, so that we can conduct an ethnic dilution of the population, and we'll shift the voting patterns in doing that. So anyway, this is going on. People who will pay the price particularly are the working poor, people on Social Security and pensions. I don't know what's happened to America, but this is just sort of one little red flag when we see what happened with Tesla, which is obviously a very, very well managed company, and who knows, it may do better in the future. Okay, the next thing we're going to get into had an interesting ruling, and this is out of Texas. God bless Texas. They do some very good things there. This is out of the Daily Caller News Foundation, and the title of the article is "Federal Judge Rules Biden Administration's LGBTQ Employee Protections Go Too Far." And the gist of it is, there is a federal district court judge out of Texas, and he has ruled that the Biden administration overstepped their boundaries when the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, released guidance and allowed these men who wear women's dresses to go in and use the women's bathrooms, and also to impose on other people the obligation of lying and using false pronouns. In other words, when you have a man in a dress, you're supposed to call him she or her, even though you know it's a man that you're talking about. And fortunately, the district court judge said that that's going way too far, and that the EEOC was without power to do that. I actually haven't looked to see who appointed this particular judge, but I can just say as a general matter, President Trump, during his term in office, managed to make an enormous number of judicial appointments, and he shifted the federal courts a great distance towards following the rule of law, reinvigorating the U.S. Constitution, which had been effectively abandoned by the Supreme Court since the time of the Earl Warren Court back in the early 1950s. Now, what happened when we had the Earl Warren Court in the 50s, I think it was 52 that he took over, these justices on the Supreme Court, under the guise of a decision that was before them, and often I think there were arrangements made to make sure that certain cases got filed and brought forward. But anyway, the Supreme Court justices recognized that the great failing of the U.S. Constitution, the grave weakness, is that there are no checks and balances on the Supreme Court, as there are on the other branches of government. It just, the Constitution was not perfect, and that was one of its imperfections. So these justices and the Chief Justice said, nobody can second guess us. We're lifetime appointees. We can do whatever we want. Our decisions are unappealable. And so what prevents us from simply starting to make the laws? Yeah, Congress was supposed to enact the laws. We're not allowed to enact the laws, but nobody can stop us. So let's do it. Let's upend American society and culture, and we'll just do what we think we want to do. And that has gone on really since the 50s until just now. There's a very clearly detectable trend towards returning to the original intent of the Constitution. We saw that with the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe versus Wade. And the Dobbs decision said there was no rational basis for Roe versus Wade, that these decisions over abortion are decisions to be made by the states. And so we're seeing this move back. Now we've departed so far from the Constitution that the Supreme Court and the federal courts following suit have pretty much abandoned protections of the Bill of Rights. The U.S. citizens have. You look at the political prisoners in Washington D.C. right now, who for trespassing in the Capitol building, they have been denied their Eighth Amendment right to bail. The Constitution says you will have it. Washington D.C., the District of Columbia says no, you won't. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want these people out. So they're not getting out. We'll put them in confinement, put them in solitary confinement. People who have never committed the smallest offense in their lifetimes, people who, they weren't armed, not a single person in the Capitol building was armed. How they can ever call this an insurrection is, I mean, it's just a marvelous mental gymnastics to be able to make that claim. But in any event, so we've been denied the right to bail. Free speech has suffered enormously. We saw Twitter censor the President of the United States. We've seen all of these social media platforms deny people the right to freely discuss controversial issues like the COVID vaccine, the January 6th demonstrations in the Capitol, the legitimacy of the presidential election, global warming, just a whole series of things. The Ukraine war and the justification for getting involved. All of these things, that there are two sides to these issues. And if you did not allow people to freely discuss them, you simply don't have a free society any longer. But the good news is that we are starting to see federal courts move back towards the rule of law and the Constitution itself. So I think that's a very good sign. Whether we can restore this country, I don't know. Our finances have been so distorted. We've had our public schools, just a total collapse of the moral culture within the public schools. We have all of these teachers who are indoctrinating school children in transgenderism and teaching them to respect homosexual sodomy, with the idea of grooming them for later sexual advances by pedophiles. We've got the critical race theory that has sort of entitled inner city gangs to engage in smash and grabs and very vicious beatings of people. Got the BLM, the Antifa-inspired mobs roaming the cities, looting, burning, chasing down citizens, assassinating many dozens of police. Now, this wasn't just something inherent in the nature of the American people. Much of this social decay can be put directly at the feet of the U.S. Supreme Court and the subordinate federal courts. They've attacked traditional morality, they've attacked Christianity, they've inspired disparate racial treatment, and in any event, we have come a long ways, and it has not been uphill, it's been downhill. And let's just pray that there's time to bring it back. I think there is. I'm very excited about the midterm elections. I think not only will we see a lot more Republicans, but perhaps more importantly, we'll see some Republicans who actually believe in the Constitution. They believe in moral values. And so there perhaps is more substance to them morally and intellectually than there has been with some of their predecessors in the Republican Party. And certainly the Democratic Party has been a total washout. I mean, it is amazing the deterioration that I've seen since I was first elected to office in 1998. And there was a time I won 12 elections, I lost one. And when I lost one, I started thinking about running for the Senate, which I ultimately did and won. And I was making a list of legislators that I considered friends that I could perhaps count on a little bit for one thing or another. And I made a list, and surprisingly, although I was widely acknowledged to be the most conservative member of the Virginia General Assembly, about 40% of the people that I had personal friendships with were Democrats. And they were typically Democrats who, where there was some common ground. There was, they weren't some. Actually, there were a few of them who were definitely good souls who would be on our side, sometimes with pro-life, sometimes with gun rights, occasionally with taxes. But there was some room to work together in the middle. And it's very sad what's happened to the Democratic Party. It's become infected by this whole idea of this neo-Marxist philosophy, this idea of equity replacing equality. Equity meaning group rights, equality meaning individual treatment. And so whether the Democratic Party can come back, honestly, I think the best thing they could do is disband the party and then come back with a completely new party that would maybe pick up the few good pieces that are left in the Democratic philosophy, and then come up with a completely new and perhaps a populist sort of policy that would actually incorporate some of the more liberal leaning things, but not to the extent of just engendering a general sense of hatred towards much of the American population. So I don't know what the chances are that the Democrats would just disband. Probably pretty far-fetched, but they certainly need to have a restructuring. And I think we need two parties. I would never trust just having a one-party system with our Senate minority leader at the helm. But I think we definitely need a reconstituted Democratic Party. Hopefully we'll get that. Well, anyway, we're coming to the end of our time here. Thank you very much for being with me. And I believe John Tigas will join us on Wednesday. So please be with us again at 11 o'clock on Wednesday for Focus on the News. This is Dick Black signing off.